There is a part of you that you try not to see, and the more you suppress it, the more it quietly controls your life. It's the reason you sometimes overreact, the reason you judge people instantly, the reason you feel satisfaction when someone you dislike fails and immediately feel ashamed of it. Most people spend their entire lives pretending this part doesn't exist, but ignoring it doesn't make it disappear. It makes it stronger. Today, we're going to talk about something every human being has, but almost no one wants to look at directly: the dark side of being human. Not the version you show to others, not the version you like to believe in, but the real, uncomfortable part of your psyche, the one that contains everything you've learned to reject. Aggressive impulses, jealousy, cruel thoughts, desires you'd never admit out loud, thoughts that make you think, why would I even think something like this? So what exactly is this dark side? It's everything you had to push out of your conscious identity in order to be accepted by others and by yourself. From childhood, we learn very quickly which parts of us are allowed to exist. Anger is punished. Selfishness is corrected. Envy is judged. Certain emotions are labeled as bad. So we adapt. We keep the parts that get approval, and we bury the rest. But here's the paradox most people don't understand. What you repress doesn't disappear. It stays alive beneath the surface. It accumulates energy. And sooner or later, it demands expression. That's why repression requires constant effort. And that's why it eventually fails. This dark side exists for a reason. From an evolutionary perspective, many of these impulses were once useful. Aggression helped us defend ourselves. Self-interest ensured survival. Suspicion protected us from threats. The problem is that we now live in a complex society where these impulses are often inappropriate, but our nervous system still produces them. And there's something even deeper. Human beings define themselves through contrast. We know who we are partly through who we are not. Good exists in relation to evil. Light exists in relation to shadow. Without this polarity, there would be no real choice, only automatic goodness. And automatic goodness is not morality. It's programming. Culture reinforces this division. Every society defines what is virtuous, and by doing so, also defines what must be hidden. Those forbidden traits don't disappear from human nature. They go underground. We become experts at appearing acceptable on the outside, while inside, rejected material continues to accumulate. And the dark side never stays passive. It leaks out in indirect ways, in dreams where no one can judge us, in projections where we criticize in others exactly what we refuse to see in ourselves, in sudden emotional explosions where a small event triggers a reaction that clearly comes from somewhere deeper. You've felt this before. You knew your reaction was disproportionate, but you didn't know why. One of the most subtle ways the dark side operates is through rationalization. We rarely say, "I'm acting out of envy." Instead, envy becomes justice. Aggression becomes honesty. Selfishness becomes self-respect. We build convincing stories to protect our self-image, stories that make questionable actions feel morally justified. And the more intelligent we are, the better we become at lying to ourselves. Here's the dangerous part most people miss. The dark side feeds on denial. The more you fight it, the more energy it gains. Repression doesn't make you virtuous. It makes you rigid. You become hyper-controlled, always vigilant, always afraid that something unacceptable might slip out. And that constant internal surveillance is exhausting. Living while hiding a part of yourself drains vitality, creativity, and authenticity. So the real question becomes, what do you do with your dark side? And here's the crucial clarification. Accepting it does not mean acting it out. It does not mean indulging destructive impulses. And it does not mean abandoning morality. Acceptance begins with recognition. It means being honest enough to admit, yes, sometimes I feel envy. Yes, sometimes I feel aggressive. Yes, sometimes my motivations are petty. This honesty doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a conscious one. Here's the paradox of acceptance. When you stop fighting the dark side, it loses much of its destructive power. An impulse that is observed doesn't need to explode into action. It can pass through awareness without controlling behavior. There is a fundamental difference between having a thought and being that thought. You can notice a violent impulse without becoming violent. You can observe envy without identifying as an envious person. That distance between awareness and identification is freedom. When you look deeper, you often discover that dark impulses are defenses. Behind anger, there is often pain. Behind envy, a sense of inadequacy. Behind selfishness, fear of scarcity or abandonment. These strategies once protected you. They simply outlived their usefulness. Acceptance means understanding their origin, not letting them run your life. Integration is the next step. This means consciously transforming raw impulses into mature expressions. Aggression becomes assertiveness, the ability to defend boundaries. Self-interest becomes self-care. Envy becomes information about desires you've been ignoring. Even darkness contains energy. When integrated, it becomes strength, depth, and clarity. There is also creativity in the shadow. Anger fuels change. Suspicion sharpens discernment. The ability to see what's wrong allows us to improve what's broken. When denied, the dark side sabotages you. When integrated, it serves you. Self-compassion is essential here. Most people respond to their shadow with cruelty toward themselves. But shame doesn't make you better. It makes you divided. Compassion doesn't mean justification. It means understanding without abandoning responsibility. You can acknowledge why you acted a certain way and still commit to acting differently next time. Accepting the dark side also requires tolerance for ambiguity. You are not purely good or purely bad. You are a complex mixture of noble intentions and flawed motivations. Trying to simplify yourself into a good person only creates more repression. Wholeness comes from complexity, not perfection. This is not a one-time realization. Accepting the dark side is an ongoing process. New layers emerge as life changes. This isn't failure. It's growth. And as you accept your own shadow, something unexpected happens. You become less judgmental toward others, because you recognize the same struggle everywhere. Being human means containing the entire spectrum, from the most elevated ideals to the most primitive impulses. When you accept this, you stop living a censored version of yourself. You become freer to choose who you want to be, not from denial, but from awareness. The dark side is not your enemy. It is the price of freedom, the source of depth, the condition for conscious choice. Ignoring it doesn't make you good. It makes you unconscious. And unconsciousness is where real damage begins. Accepting the shadow is not darkness. It is, paradoxically, the most luminous act a human being can perform. Thank you for taking this time to reflect with me. I hope you carry something from this conversation into your day, into your life. Be gentle with yourself until we meet again.